It's difficult to always go round.
Thank you. As someone that comes from Plymouth, very near Cornwall, that sees how Cornwall could not sustain its future in overfishing in Cornwall. It sees there's simply only a limited amount of fish stock. That saw the European investment into things as big as the Eden project, that saw high streets flourish because of the investment of Europe, that yes, we may only get 50, whatever percentage of the money that we give to Europe back, but the add-on effects that come from what the money that Europe comes vastly overpays the amount that we give them. I see the benefit that the European Union does to this country, to the most deprived people in the most deprived areas, and gives us a sustainable future when we've got America and China and India, the BRIC countries growing. We need the EU to survive as a country. We do not need your lunacy policies.
Well, their propaganda has worked on you jolly well, hasn't it? Because what they do... Well, okay, let's talk about Cornwall, shall we? Let's talk about Cornwall. I had dinner last night with the owner of Trago Mills, who, as you know, are the biggest company based in Cornwall, with those huge out-of-town shopping stores in Lisgar. Don't shake your head. In Lisgar and Falmouth. So Bruce employs 1,000 people in Cornwall, which in Cornish terms is big stuff. Cornwall is, of course, as you know, an island, surrounded by the sea and with the Tamar, this huge division of the Tamar. What has happened to the Cornish fishing industry is nothing short of a total and absolute tragedy. And if the spin of these people who have put together one of the worst man-made ecological disasters in the world, if their spin has got through to you, I'm sad. What has happened is this. International waters, globally, as agreed in 1976, after the Icelandics beat us in a Cod War, say that up to 200 miles from your shore, or the median line, i.e. the division between France and England, that the fish that swim in those waters are your resource and your asset. Okay? What we have done, as a member of the European Union, is we have given away over 4/5 of that asset to other countries. We as a country are allowed to catch 18% by value of the fish that swim in British territorial waters. We are also forced to use a regime called quotas, which means much of the year we throw back dead more than we're allowed to keep. And when you look at same countries like Norway, who are not governed by crooks in Brussels, but run their own country, discards in Norway are illegal. The fishing industry in Norway is flourishing. And I do recommend with those views you don't go down Newman and walk down the quayside and utter them, because they'll tip you in the drink. They'll tip you in the drink. These people, I've met them in the Fisherman's Mission in Newlyn. People whose families have fished out of there for 300 years, and they're gone. They're gone. Taken from us, given away by British politicians so desperate to get us into this wonderful European club. There is no example of more harm that has been done to this country than the common fisheries policy. And the sooner we're out of it, and the sooner we take back our territorial waters, and the sooner we put in place some proper conservation measures and get our fishing industry back, the better.
Hello Nigel. I wasn't expecting to agree with anything you said this evening, and I've been surprised actually. I do agree with you with fish discards. I completely disagree with you on wind turbines. Wind turbines are good. They're the business and will stop carbon emissions. I know, I work in that part of the industry. So I think you've got to be careful about talking about what you do know and talking about what you don't know. But I'm not talking about fish, I'm not talking about windmills. What I want to talk to you about is democracy. As a Marxist, we ain't got democracy in this country. We never have had. We haven't got democracy in Europe. We never have had. what makes you think it's any different if we come out of Europe? We still haven't got democracy. They still demonstrate on the streets of London against student tuition fees and still are completely ignored. It's no wonder that 60% of 18 to 30-year-olds don't vote. They're not going to vote if we come out of Europe. They're not going to vote if we stay in Europe.
Well, I think they will vote if it matters. They will. I mean, listen, I won't round about wind turbines with you. You have your view.
I know the stuff.
I've researched this for years. I think they're awful. We will. They're bloody ugly though, aren't they? We will beg to differ on that. Democracy. Well, look. Yeah, you know, what is democracy and self-government? What we would certainly have back outside of the EU is self-government. All right, and you and I can agree on that. Okay. I think where you're pushing towards is our system democratic? Is the electoral system we've got in this country democratic? I would agree with you. I think it's urgently in need of reform. Because even when you have a Tory government or a Labour government that's been in office for ages and is mega unpopular, still 2/3 of seats are safe seats. And that is a huge turn-off, isn't it? I mean, you as a Marxist, sir, if you were living in Esher, you know, and it was a rainy Thursday afternoon, what is the point?
It's bad enough in Whitstable.
Yeah. But you know, what is the point if you go to vote? And the same would be if you were a high Tory living in Sheffield. There needs to be an incentive to get people to go down to the polling station. I agree with that. I have long felt that the German system was actually infinitely preferable to our system. No doubt the Germans teaching us about democracy. But you know, they have 2 ballot papers, and one is under first past the post still, and it's for the man or woman to represent you in Bremerhaven South. And there are advantages to that. Because here in Canterbury, you know who your MP is. And that does give you a link, I think. And you feel, you know, there is your representative, and that's rather important. But you also have a second ballot paper in Germany, and the last 20% of the seats are made up with that second ballot paper, which is why the Greens and people like that get representation in the German Parliament. And I would like to see something along those lines. But look, we can argue about that once we've got our rights of self-government back. At the moment, we're being reduced to the position where general elections in this country are completely and utterly meaningless. 100% of employment legislation, 100% of health and safety legislation, 100% of environmental legislation, and now 100% of regulation of Britain's biggest industry, which is financial services. And I don't mean banking, I mean insurance, I mean investment, I mean pension funds and all the rest of it. So much of this has been handed over that increasingly voting doesn't matter. And I look forward to a self-governing Britain and you and I having a proper argument and presenting people with a proper choice. That would be a much healthier democracy than the one we're living in now. So there we are, we have points in common, which is good.
You agree or not?
You're on the Diddleby's job, aren't you? You're trying to put one. Listen, I did, when I mentioned Marx earlier, say that he was well-intentioned. Well-intentioned, certainly, no question about that. Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Farage. I'm from the Czech Republic, and in England I learned that many people don't like you for whatever reasons. But I want to say that in the Eastern countries you are very popular, yes, because you represent the voice of us, and there are much more people than here who think that it is necessary what you say in the European Parliament. So I would like to thank you that you're one of the few who say those unelected people like Rompuy and Barroso who would like to rule Europe, that you say them what we think, the people. And my question is, if you and your party are willing to cooperate with our parties from the Eastern Europe, for example with European Conservative and Reformist Party, you know, and despite they aren't totally against the European Union, but still they share many of your values and thoughts. So because we aren't too strong and our voice is not very strong, as we can see, for example, French President Sarkozy, who's, yeah, you know what he says about us, he makes fun of us, so we're like nobody for them. So your English, your voice is stronger. So if you are willing to cooperate with them and help move Europe from a strong federal state.
Thank you. It's a mystery to me how countries like yours that were imprisoned behind the Berlin Wall in the Iron Curtain, who went through those decades of failing economics and misery, or with almost no liberty, in a society where children reported on parents, horrible, horrible, horrible. And the Berlin Wall came down. And for 20 years, you've had independence, self-government, democracy, but you know, maybe between the two. And you've done wonderfully well, and you've re-established your parliaments, you've got a damn good constitution, a president, rather marvellous president actually in your case. You also, of course, split up Czechoslovakia, which again was an artificial creation. You did so, good example in fact, a question earlier, how do we leave the European Union? You know, the breakup of the Czech Republic and Slovakia shows you that you can break up currency unions, you can do it peaceably and be good neighbours and friends. And so it's a mystery to me. And do you know what I've seen with Eastern European politicians coming from countries where often the average salary is a mere fraction of what it is in Brussels? I've seen your politicians, your bureaucrats, many of whom prospered under communism, reinvent themselves and become pro-European and become multi-millionaires in the process and betray that hard-won freedom that you've enjoyed for such a short period of time. So I have enormous sympathy with what you're trying to do, and I'm going to Prague to speak at a big public rally on the second Monday of June. So yes, I will support parties like yours in the Czech Republic, absolutely. It is important people realise UKIP isn't just about this island, it's about the fact we want to live in a Europe of trade, democracy and freedom, and we'll all be happier when we do.
Should UK independence include Scottish independence?
Well, good question. I have to say, I used to take the old-fashioned view, the old-fashioned unionist view, that we must keep as much power in London as we possibly can, and we mustn't allow the Celtic Fringe to have any more autonomy over their own lives and over their own affairs. And I realised just how ridiculously wrong I was in thinking that. I've now come to the view that if we listened to old man Gladstone in 1886 and we'd given the Irish home rule, we wouldn't have had the IRA. We wouldn't have had thousands of deaths and all of that misery. You know, it works well in Catalonia, doesn't it? Catalonia has a huge degree of autonomy, but it's still part of the Spanish state. And I'm now all for devolution. I think the Scots should have as much self-government as they possibly want. I'd actually rather like to see Alex Salmond in charge of the Scottish budget, actually having to raise and spend his own money. I think the realities of the SNP would be rather different in those circumstances. So I believe that the English have been left out of all of this. The English deserve an identity and deserve a voice and deserve their own parliament. I want a new federal structure, the F word from me. I want a new federal structure for the United Kingdom that I think better reflects the mood of those nations. I don't want to see the United Kingdom break up, but I think if we try, and Miliband, Cameron and Clegg are trying, if we try to keep holding on to as much as we can, that may well force separation. I think accepting that people have, you know, their own identities within a bigger picture is the right way to go. And I think actually it's what's going to happen anyway. I think the genie's out of the bottle. I don't think Blair knew actually what he was doing. He thought that by giving a little bit of power he would kill the argument off, but no, they want more power, and you can't blame them really. So yeah, Alex Salmond in charge of raising and spending taxes in Scotland would be enormous fun, believe me. Okay.
To find out more about who we are and what we stand for, go to the UK Independence Party website at www.ukip.org.